Let's start it again. Read my notes.
Do I need to be completely on the camera? Or is half of me good enough?
Half is
If
good, as
you're
long as they
sitting
see
here.
you're a real person.
Yeah,
Will not
okay.
flash a little. Should we close the door?
Oh, you and me both. Of course we wore our low cuts.
Same here.
All right, we're stunning, we're beautiful, go ahead. Now, I'm only talking to you, I'm not looking at the camera, right?
Right, we're gonna forget the camera's there.
Oh, yeah. But wait, then I have to move a little closer.
Okay.
What am I hitting?
Hit the try the pause thing first.
This?
Try the camera. Yes. Are we recording? Okay, I think we're good.
I think we're recording.
Okay.
It says recording.
Good morning, Ms. Fogel.
Good morning, Mrs. Brandt, how are you?
I'm good. I'm here with Judy Fogel, who is
Hello.
interviewing for an ESE support facilitation position in our high school. I'm the ESE coordinator at Village Academy. Okay, Ms. Fogel, so you've been an ESE teacher for a couple of years?
About between 10 and 12, yes.
Okay, at the high school level?
Partly at the high school level, partly at middle school level.
Okay, well, our position here is that's good because we have a mix of middle school classes and high school classes.
Okay.
All right, and our students are mainly learning disabled students, and we have some language impaired students as well.
Familiar with that population.
Perfect. Okay, so to start the interview, I'm going to ask you some questions. And the first is, can you describe a time that you demonstrated the ability to be an effective team member within a school?
An effective team member, sure. In our schools, whenever we've had IEP meetings for individual educational plan meetings with parents, with school social workers, with guidance counselors, with gen ed teachers, administrators, etc., I have actually in the past coordinated IEP meetings with all of those people, of course, also with parents, all sitting at the same table, and I think I was a fairly effective team member at those meetings.
Okay. Can you describe a little bit more about what your role is on the IEP team?
Right. As an ESE teacher, my role was basically to draft the IEP and present it at the meeting in order that we could all have input. All the team members could have input if things needed to be changed, but there were also times that people weren't able to be there. So I would gather the information. I would construct the IEP. So I planned it. I researched it with those teachers that weren't going to be able to be there. Actually, I wrote it. I spoke with the parents. I explained to parents exactly what we were going to be working on with their students. And after the IEP meeting, I was responsible for making sure that those people on the IEP team who might not have been at the meeting had a copy of the IEP.
Excellent. Okay. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of planning and organization involved with your position. Can you tell me how you set goals for your students and how you get them to commit to the goals that you set for them?
Depending on the students' abilities, we work with them to set the goals together. In other words, it's a collaborative kind of effort, using the class syllabus, and depending again on their disabilities, what might they need to be able to achieve the same goals as everybody else in the class, and how could I, as a special ed teacher, help them?
So they're basically in general education classes?
Yes, the students that I've worked with, I don't know how it works here, unless you're in a direct instruction class, the students that I've worked with have been in a kind of push-in, that's what we called it, situation where I would come into their classes and help see what's going on and see where they needed help and help them. Sometimes pulling out small groups also. Sorry to interrupt, but that's another.
Okay.
That was another part.
It sounds very challenging, and like you need to
Keeps me busy.
kind of think on your feet, which leads me to my next question. If you could tell me about a time that you had to quickly adjust your work priorities to meet changing demands of the school.
Sure. Okay, sometimes I would be responsible for testing my students if they had, for example, an accommodation of extended time built into their IEP, and they needed to use that accommodation. I'm the person that would change around my schedule in order that I could help them or take them to my room and allow them to avail their use of their accommodation.
Excellent. And then I would assume you would have to do some planning with other teachers if you're holding the students or changing your schedule to meet those needs.
For sure, for sure. My position is one of cooperation with all of my gen ed teachers. If I just decided to do things on my own, I don't think it would be nearly as advantageous for the students. So I have to be in contact with the gen ed teachers, and they cooperate. My only problem that I have come up against at times is sometimes it's a time constraint. We don't necessarily have common planning times, which makes it difficult, kind of makes me have to try to grab the teachers and plan a little bit on the fly. Although we both know what the curriculum is, there's time that we would benefit, I think, from some planning time together, and we don't really have enough of that.
Okay. Well, I can see how planning time would be very important. Can you describe a new idea or suggestion that you've made to your supervisor?
Yes, I would like, I described and spoke with our supervisors about differentiated instruction and the fact that we needed a little bit more education, maybe during a PDD day, to the gen ed teachers so that they could know also how to basically break down the curriculum so that it would be learnable for some of our students. I thought it was a good suggestion.
That is a good suggestion, I agree, for sure. Okay, and it would seem that if the work is difficult or challenging, students might not be very motivated. Do you have ways that you get unmotivated students to come around and do some work?
Yes. First thing is that has to be basically done in a one-on-one situation. You can't do that in a large class. That's my personal opinion. And what I try to do with my students is when I can take them aside or take them to my room, we discuss long-term goals. What are the kinds of things you might want to do someday, da-da-da-da, do you think you want to go to college and so on? And although math or science or whatever it is, reading might be very difficult for you, why might that be something that you could need? And then what would my role be? I don't really put it on them as much as I do, what can I do to help you along? And students pretty well respond to that, especially if you treat them in kind of an adult manner, instead of, you're a little kid, you really need to learn how to read. But what can I do to help you?
I can see that at the high school level.
They answer pretty interesting.
I'm sure. I'm sure they open up to you when they're in that one-on-one
They
situation.
do at times. Not right away at the beginning. You have to establish some trust, too. But after a while, they do begin to feel more comfortable with me and talk to me and confide sometimes.
Okay. When you're not in a one-on-one situation, when you have a small group that you're working with, what strategies do you use to encourage group work?
Praise, praise, and more praise. And praise can be for even the smallest kind of increment. It can be for, hey, you really participated and you were listening for 10 minutes. that is a major improvement from how you were 2 months ago, when all I could get was 2 minutes of your attention. So it can be something as small as that, but all of us, I think none of us have enough of it in our lives. Recognition or praise doesn't have to be a real pat on the back, but sometimes a pat on the back or a word
Absolutely.
usually works.
I agree. That's true. Okay. Can you describe a difficult problem that you've had to sort out during your work time?
A problem. I actually had a student in a reading class that it was a gen ed reading class, and it had some learning disabled students in the class. This student didn't really belong in that class. He was much more on the spectrum, or maybe even EBD. He was, and the teacher agreed with me. We had talked many times, and we had him, eventually he was taken out of the class and reclassified into a different class. He really didn't belong in that class, and what we needed to do was go to administration, present our case for why this was happening, because it was way more than a regular behavior problem. And with the help of admin and the teachers, and even, believe it or not, his parents, he was removed from that class and placed in a much better situation for him.
Somewhere more appropriate for
Yes,
him.
definitely more appropriate.
Okay, perfect. Can you describe your process for getting teacher input when you're completing IEPs?
Sure. Okay, when I get the request for an IEP, and I know the date, about 3 weeks before, actually at the beginning of the year, I get a list of all the IEPs, and if I don't get it, I go to the master files and compile it. I know all my students that I am the case manager for, and I put their dates on this list so I know when they're coming up. About 3 weeks before the IEP is due, I send out a request for information on present levels of performance, on communication, and all kinds of input that I need from the gen ed teachers in this student's classes. I gather this about a week or 10 days later and use it to construct my IEP. Again, with the concept that the IEP that I construct isn't the beginning and the end of it, it's what I bring to the IEP meeting, where we all sit down, discuss, add, delete, and sometimes change that document that I've constructed. But that's pretty much how I get the information from the teachers, in order to, because I don't know everything about every student, right?
Course.
So that's our starting place.
Great. Can you describe a difficult parent interaction that you may have had, and how you handled that?
Yes, we have a number of parents who have been very unrealistic about their students' performance in school. And sometimes it's, well, he's never going to learn anything, and we feel very differently. And sometimes it's, my student already knows all of this and doesn't need your help, and everything in between. So having been a parent myself, parents can relate to me pretty easily. I try very hard to put them at ease, start from where they are, what their feelings are, respect those, and then explain, usually by using anecdotes about what's happening in class actually, and get the parents to realize that, oh, maybe my son can, or, wow, she really does need this, or something like that. But that's been my general experience.
Excellent. I guess in conclusion, I would just ask you why you obviously like being an ESC teacher, because you're applying for another position in that field. What about being an ESC teacher do you enjoy?
When I did my bachelor's way back in the day, I was gen ed early childhood and elementary education. And I was always pretty much continually drawn to the child in the class who was a little different. Slower, noisier, had trouble, this, that, and the other thing. So when I went to do my master's, special ed became kind of a natural area of interest for me. And I've never looked back. I've always been a special ed teacher, and I'm very happy doing it. I like the work. A lot of people say, oh, you must have so much patience. I'm not sure that it's patience that you need. I think it's understanding. But I do love my work, so hopefully I'll get this job.
Excellent. Well, I will be in touch with you. I appreciate you coming in.
Okay, thank you very much for talking with me.
I can see us moving you forward through the next steps of the interview process. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.